My name is F.C. Hap Chandler. The date today is 24th of September 2003, and we're at the Atlanta History Center in Atlanta, Georgia.
My name is William C. Day, and was born in July the 22nd, 1921 in Dallas, Georgia. And I now live in Marietta, Georgia.
Well, Bill, we're here today to reminisce with you about World War II days and then tell us a little bit about what happened to you after the war. Where were you born?
In Dallas, Georgia.
Dallas, Georgia. And at the time of World War II, Pearl Harbor, where were you?
I lived in Kenton, Georgia at that time.
And when did you go to the University of Georgia?
In 1940 and 41 and part of 42.
And you took some pilot training.
That's right. I took the CAA flight training course at the University of Georgia at Ben Epps Field and obtained my private pilot's license before I went into service.
So you were set to go into the Air Force and Aviation Cadet School when you left school.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about what happened to you once you went on active duty.
Well, when I went on active duty, first they sent me to Nashville, Tennessee for a classification center, whereas I was tested to be either a pilot, navigator, or bombardier. And it so happened that I qualified to be a pilot. And after that, I was sent to Greenwood, Mississippi. No, excuse me, back off. I was sent to Lafayette, Louisiana for primary flight training. From there, I went to Greenwood, Mississippi for basic flight training. And from there, I went to Craig Field in Selma, Alabama for advanced flying training, where I got my wings and was commissioned officer in the United States Army Air Force, Air Corps. And after that, I went overseas. No, after I got my wings, I went to Randolph Field, Texas for 1 month for student instructor school. From there, I went back to Greenville, Mississippi, and there I was a basic flight instructor for cadets for approximately 2 years. And I had approximately 30 cadets that went through my training at basic.
So when you completed your tour as an instructor, what was it, 1944?
Yes.
And from there you went to...
From there I went back to not advanced flying, but I went to Tallahassee, Florida, where I was taught for about a month that I learned to fly P-40s, fighter aircraft.
That's a preliminary to flying the P-51.
Yes, and from there I went to Sarasota, Florida for 19 weeks flying P-51s. And that's where I learned combat maneuvers, navigation, instrument flying, bombing, everything.
And then it was time to go overseas.
And then from there I went overseas, that's right. And I went to, as a replacement officer, to an island named Aishima, which is about 3 miles south of Okinawa. And there I was joined up by the 342nd Fighter Squadron of the 348th Fighter Group of the 5th Air Force. And from there we went into, after the peace treaty was signed, we were assigned to Itami Air Base in Osaka, Japan, as occupational forces.
While you were on Hiroshima, what did you do?
We flew escort missions for B-29s going into Japan at first, and then after that was the peace treaty was signed, we flew surveillance missions, and that went. There were 4-hour flight missions. We had external fuel tanks and bombs and ammunition, everything. We were fully loaded for combat, and we flew surveillance missions over the Sea of China, which is between Japan and China. And we had orders to shoot up anything or bomb anything that was outside the 3-mile limit from shore. And the only thing that I did was I strafed a fishing boat at one time on one of my flights in the Sea of Japan, Sea of China.
So in addition to escorting B-29s, you also had these search and destroy missions in effect.
That's right. That's right.
How many B-29 missions did you escort?
4 or 5, because these were long flights.
Well,
And longer flights for the 29s it was for us. But we still had capabilities with fuel tank, external fuel tanks, and a full fuel load, and all bombs and ammo in our 650 caliber machine guns.
How effective were the Japanese defenses against air attack, fighters?
I never experienced any air attack on the bombers. We were flying. See, we fly them in to a certain area. We didn't fly over Tokyo. We'd stop and they'd go on in, and we'd circle around and wait till they came out in case they were attacked. And when they came out, we get up above them and fly high escort level to them on the way back to their base. And he would get off and turn off on, go back to Aishima and land. On Aishima, there was 3 landing strips. There's one for the P-51s, one for the P-47s, and one for the P-38s. And the airstrips went from one edge of the water on the island to the other end of the island, which is the water. In other words, your airstrip went from shore to shore. That's how wide the island was. So at one time, we had a representative from Republic Aviation, which is a company that made the P-47s, the Thunderbolts. And he said that he was going to take off in a P-48, P-47 Thunderbolt, fully loaded with ammo, gas, and ammunition, and bombs, and never use the supercharger to take off the ground. So everybody on the whole island went down to watch him the next day. And we lined up along the runway, just like just anything else. He got in that airplane, opened up the throttle wide open, and did not turn on his supercharger. And he drove that airplane off the end of that runway just like he'd drive a car off of it. And when he hit the ground, he went up. It blew him to a million pieces. They couldn't find anything of him. He killed himself by saying, and he was a company rep that knew what that P-47 would do. But that's what happened to him.
How about P-51? Would it take off under those circumstances?
Well, we always had, when we took off, we had a full load. And it got off the ground, yes, sir. You didn't have to worry about it growing off the end of the runway. But we always...
When you say full load, what do you mean?
Full load of fuel, internal fuel tanks, which is one behind you, 2 wing tanks, 2 external wing tanks, a full load of 500-pound bombs, and a full load of ammunition for your 650 caliber machine guns. You had 3 in each wing.
So the airplane was pretty heavy when you took
It was heavy. And we always had orders that if we had to engage the enemy in any way, the first thing we did was drop our external fuel tanks, because that's the gas we used first. And when we used those 2 fuel tanks of fuel, we jettisoned those tanks and switched to internal tanks.
Where were you when they dropped the atomic bomb?
I was in, I think I was in Manila, but at that time, at Clark Field, on the way up to Aishima. I'm not sure. But let me tell you what, I have flown over Hiroshima after the bomb was dropped. And that city looked like a checkerboard. The streets looked just like perfect squares, but there was nothing there but the streets. There's one building left in the middle of Hiroshima. And it was a concrete building that had a steel tower on the top. And it looked like somebody just took their hand down and twisted it like that. And it was still standing. But the rest of the town, rest of the city was gone. There wasn't nothing there except the streets, and it looked just like a checkerboard. I never will forget the sight of that. And that was the first bomb they dropped. I never did fly over the other one where they dropped the second one.
It was in Nagasaki.
Nagasaki, yeah. So that's one experience I've had that I'll never forget, was flying over Hiroshima and seeing what it looked like. Nothing but just squares on the ground, paved with paved streets, like a square.
You mentioned Clark Field in the Philippines. How long were you there?
I was there overnight, and that was it. But they got us out of there pretty quick.
They wanted to send you up to Hiroshima and put you in combat.
That's right. Get us on up there. See, we were a replacement. There was me and two other guys that went into this squadron that I was assigned to. And when we walked into the squadron commander's tent, we lived in 8-9 tents. And when we walked into the squadron commander's tent, there he stood with nothing on but his underwear shorts. And he's a major. And he asked us who we were. We told him. He said, well, the first thing you're going to do is take your rank off. We do not have rank on this island. So we had to take our bars off and our wings. Said we don't have any rank or anything like that on this island. He says, how much flying time have you three people got in a P-51? And we also told him at least 100, maybe 125 flying time, hours of flying time in a P-51. He says, all right, as of right now, you three are my new flight leaders because I've got 20 hours in the P-51 and I got more than anybody else in the squadron. So he said, you three are going to teach us how to fly them. So we were made flight leaders at that time. So on all my surveillance missions that I flew, I was the flight leader. I had to do the navigation, everything. The others were just wingmen. They just sitting there watching me and flying with me. There's always three of us, me and the pilot, the lead pilot, and the two wingmen. But I have been low enough on the Sea of China in a P-51 that my prop sucked water up off of the ocean. That's pretty close. And the only reason I know that was because my wingman says, you're low enough, you're sucking water up off the water. So I quit.
In Europe, fighter pilots said the greatest fun was to go strafing.
Oh, yeah.
But they would be relieved from their duties as escort, and then they could
right.
go down.
Now, another thing we did when we wasn't assigned to a surveillance mission, we would go up and fly and meet with a P-47 pilot or a P-38 pilot, and we'd dogfight. You know what dogfight is?
Yeah.
You maneuver like this, like if you were shooting down an enemy aircraft. And we had this other guy behind me in a P-47, had a short in his control column. And when he pulled back on the stick when we were in a tight turn, his .650 caliber guns went off. And I felt them go under me, just like a vacuum. You could feel them, but he never did hit me. But when it went off, he did like this and peeled off. And I said, what's the matter? He says, I got a short in my column, and he emptied his .650 caliber guns before it quit firing. He didn't have his hand on the trigger or nothing, because your trigger's on your control column.
Wasn't your time?
Well, it wasn't my time. Well, that's one of my instances that's happened to me. I've had another one when I was basically in basic flying school training cadets. I got landed on at night by another BT-13. We were up night flying, the whole squadron was, and we were assigned to areas, you know, different levels, 3 levels to a quadrant, and you get up there and you just circle and circle and circle, and then call you in for landings. And we're teaching night landing, night flying. So my radio went out. I had no lights on the aircraft and nothing. He said, if that happens, you just come down and buzz the tower, and I'll see the exhaust from your flames from the exhaust on your aircraft. then I'll give you the green light to either, or red light, either one, to land or not land. So he gave me the green light. So I went around and come in and was rolling down the runway. This airplane hit me and veered off to the right. Well, of course, we stopped right then, both of us. But the squadron commander was in the tower. And he came down out of that tower and ran all the way across that field to that airstrip and asked me if we were all right. And I said, yeah. He says, all right, get out, come on. You're going to get in another airplane and go right back up. You're not going to quit. So they made us take off again. And when I got to Aishima, one of the first pilots I met in the P47 group was one of the students of my first class in basic training. I'll never forget that. So I met one of my own students in combat in another outfit.
Did he speak to you?
Oh yeah, he knew who I was.
Some of them didn't care for that.
That's right. That's right. So it was something.
How many cadets were killed while you were instructing you?
Let's see. In all my flight training, from P51s on back to primary, there's none in primary, none in basic, and in advanced flying we had 2, and there's another one killed in P51s. We never did find him, so they think he went down in the Gulf. Because see, Sarasota was on the Gulf. They never did find him. And the thing that when they lost him, he and I were up flying in 2 different aircraft, and I was flying instrument flying under the hood. I couldn't even see outside because the hood comes over the whole cockpit and covers you up. See that right there? You can just see the whole cockpit. The hood would just cover you up. And I never did hear him talk to me or anything because I was flying.
He went into the Gulf.
I had no radio contact with him at all.
Really
So I really don't know. So when he would tell me where I was to make a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn or go up or come down on my instruments. When I didn't hear any contact to him, I came out from under the hood and I couldn't find him. I looked around everywhere. I flew around everywhere looking for him. So I called the control tower at the base in Sarasota. And I said, my wingman's gone. I can't find him. So they couldn't get into contact with him. So they called me on back to come back and tell me what had happened. So I told them what had happened. That was one instance. That was one guy. His name was John N. Harrell. I'll never forget him. He was from Texas. Another one that got killed in Tallahassee on a P-40 flight mission was another guy from Houston, Texas. And he got killed too. I don't know how he got killed, but he was just a friend of mine that got killed landing at an airstrip, practicing landings in the P-40.
It's not easy to forget those fellows, is it?
No, it's not. I remember it just as if it just happened yesterday.
What about cadets when you were training cadets in basic training? Did you lose many of them?
No, sir. Not a one.
Yeah,
In fact, we never lost one at the base there at all.
When you got to Hiroshima, flying there in combat.
We didn't lose any, huh? At that time, the war was just about over, really, because most of my flying was surveillance, really. After the Japanese came through on the way to Manila to meet MacArthur and sign the peace treaty, they landed on our strip in their aircraft, and we had to fly them down. Well, the Air Force had to fly them down in one of our aircraft from Aishima to Manila. They wouldn't let them fly their own aircraft because they're afraid somebody would shoot them down.
Do you remember how that Japanese aircraft was painted?
Yep, had a big red cross on it.
Yeah. Painted white.
Yep, big white red cross. Well, it's a big cross in white. Sure do.
So you were in Japan for several months after the war was over?
Yes, yes.
How long was
About a year, I guess. I can't remember. Never have. Now, another thing that happened to us in Japan, we had one of these guys, his name was Captain Bill Kruger. I'll never forget him. He was a piano player for some jazz band out of New Jersey. And he said one day, he says, I'm going to fly a landing pattern and do it in less than 30 seconds. I said, you can't do it. It can't be done. He said, well, come down tomorrow and I'll show you. So, all right. So we all go down to the air base the next morning, and he's up flying around, and he comes in to land. He comes in over the runway, peels off like this, comes around, throws his flaps down, and comes in like that to land. He's only made one mistake. He landed about 30 feet off the ground. And when he landed, that airplane went just like that, and it didn't slide 2 feet. The landing gear came up through the wings. And his head hit the gun sight, as you can see right there. And it peeled his head back just like this. The gun sight right there for your guns is right there. And see, this big piece of metal right here behind you is a solid piece of steel. In fact, it's your seat. And behind that is a 55-gallon gas tank. And when he hit, that whole seat collapsed, and he just went forward like that, seat and all. And he hit the gun sight with his head. And I don't know if it killed him or what, but they got him out of the airplane and put him in the hospital. We never did see him again. So we don't know if he survived or if he was just discharged after that. I don't know.
Well,
but his name was Bill Kruger.
You know, they used to say they're old pilots and bold pilots.
That's right.
So you spent almost a year in Japan.
Yep, just about.
And what was the base in Japan?
Itami Air Base, Itami Air Base. It was there. It was just like an airport, really. And the Air Force just took it over. That's where we flew.
Japanese Air Force Base, really?
Yeah. So when we flew in from Aishima, that's where we went and landed there.
What was the attitude of the Japanese toward the Americans?
Well, it's a funny thing when you saw Japanese and they saw you, they ran. They wouldn't have anything to do with us. In fact, we couldn't have anything to do with them. But they sure would scatter. If you got into a Jeep and was riding down the road and you saw a bunch of them and they saw you, they hit the woods and the fields and got away from it. It scattered out. I don't know. They wasn't friendly and they wasn't unfriendly, but they just didn't have anything to do with us, which is fine.
They didn't attempt to shoot at you?
Oh, no. No, nothing like that.
And so after you completed your year in Japan, you came back to the United States?
That's right. And at the time when I was up for reassignment, the squadron commander, which is Major Popek, in this picture here, called me into his tent and says, you've got enough points to either go home or you want to go to Korea. I said, I'll go home. So they put me on they flew me to Manila, and I got on a ship and came back to the West Coast and got out. Now,
That's the squadron CO that sent you home.
That's right. Major Popek is his name, P-O-P-E-K.
How long did it take you to get from Manila to West Coast?
Which one are you and which one?
I'm not in this Picture at all. This is Major Benz. Nothing. I had a picture of me and another guy on this same, but I couldn't find it. With all the Japanese they shot down. That's the history of the squadron right there. And they came all the way up. That squadron went all the way up from Manila on, from Clark Field on up to Aishima and then into Japan.
There was a very famous war correspondent that went ashore on Aishima and was killed.
That's right. Ernie Powell. I know where his grave is. I've seen it.
They buried him on the island.
That's right.
He was a doughboy's friend.
He sure was.
Didn't last long on the Hiroshima, though.
Oh,
As we used to say, his luck ran out.
that's right. And his grave is right by the road. There's not but one road on Hiroshima, and it circles the whole island. And his grave is right on the edge of the road on the east side of the island, where he went in with the forces, invasion forces, when they first went in, but he got killed right there. And he's buried right there. And on his marker, they had his name and a helmet. I'll never forget that either.
Killed in action.
Right.
Well, you went down to Manila and you got on a boat and came home. How long did it take that boat to get from Manila?
I don't know, but I tell you, one morning I woke up and that ship was rolling just like a roller coaster. And I went out on deck, and it's as far as you could see was nothing, just plain water. There wasn't a ripple on the ocean, nowhere. And you're talking about Erie. Now that's Erie. It's as far as you can see, not a ripple on the water. And you out there, and the only thing you could see was out the back of the ship where we were making waves with the props off of the ship.
It was rolling.
Well, it rolled that night, during that night. But the next morning when I got up, we stayed in our bunks like this, holding on.
The storm had passed.
Yeah, the storm had passed, and it was a perfect calm. I'd never seen anything like that.
That's why they call it Pacific.
That's right. On Aishima, I went through what they call over there, they call them a typhoon. Over here, we call them a hurricane. But over there, it's a typhoon. It's the first place I've ever seen a sheet of tin going through the air like a knife, just as flat as it could be. And the wind was 110 miles an hour. Of course, it blew out all of our tents and everything else that we had there. I have some pictures of those at home.
Where were you when all this 110 mile an hour wind?
On Aishima.
Yeah, but were you in a foxhole? Or
No, it was in our 8-man tent.
and the tent blew away?
It sure did. All we had was just a frame.
Well, how did you keep from getting blown away?
We just didn't. It just gone. It ripped them off.
So,
And wet, soaking wet. Wasn't nothing dry.
I've experienced one of those typhoons. It's unbelievable.
They are. It's something.
Combination of a tornado and a rainstorm.
That's right. The wind, the rain going through the air just like this and not coming down. It's going this way.
Horizontal. Well, when you got back to the United States, what did the Army do for you?
I went to Fort Mac, and that's where I was discharged.
Said goodbye.
And that's when I signed up and went into the reserve. Of course, they never did call me back to duty or anything, but I didn't. That's the reason I got my honorable discharge from the reserve in 1957.
But they did not call you back to the Korean War.
No, sir.
Well, what would you do after you get out of the service?
Oh, the next move after that, I went to work with the Veterans Administration in Marietta, Georgia, as a clerk on GI insurance.
In the big old Lockheed.
Yeah,
Lockheed.
which at that time was Lockheed Administration building. That's where the VA was at that time. That's where I worked. And from there, let's see, when I went to, what did I do after I quit working for them? I can't remember.
Well, you chose not to go back to the University of Georgia.
Oh, no, I didn't go back. I was over there 2.5 years.
With the VA.
No, before I went to the.
So 2.5 years before you went in the Army.
Yes, I went to school with Frank Sinkwich and that bunch of football
Old
players.
Bowl team. That was a great football team.
Yeah, Lamar Davis, Andy Dudish, Ken Cooper. Now, Ken Cooper was a lineman, but he was a red-headed guy, and he was big and strong, but he got killed in the Pacific. He was one big man.
There was an end on that team who was left for dead in the Battle of the Bulge off to Lake Poshmark.
George Poshner, yeah, I went to school with him.
And after the war, he would come over there in a wheelchair in football. One of the sad things that happened during the war. So you worked for the BAs, you managed to get married about this time?
Oh, well, I was married before while I was in service.
Oh, really?
Yes, at that time, and that's where my oldest son, Marshall, was born in Greenville, Mississippi. When I was an instructor, pilot instructor, he was born in Greenville, Mississippi. And then my other son was born here in Marietta after the war was over.
You have two sons?
Yes, 2 sons, 3 grandchildren.
Your wife's still alive?
Yes, her birthday was last week. Her name is Betty. Betty Dean Day. And she turned 78 last week. Yeah.
Do your friends from Army days get together for reunions on occasion?
No, sir, we don't, because we're all scattered out, especially when we were flying P-51s and all that. We never have gotten back together. I had a lot of pictures of friends that I had in Sarasota, but I don't know what happened to them after. I was sent one way, I don't know where they went. But we were in Sarasota to be trained as P-51 fighter pilots. If the war hadn't ended, I guess we'd have been doing a lot more fire shooting and flying.
Yes, you would have. The atomic bomb ended the war.
It sure did.
And the plan was in November to invade Japan.
Mm-hmm.
The bloodiest engagement of American army.
You talking about losing troops, man, we would have lost, tell it how many thousands. Because those people over there, those pilots in their Air Force, they had no regard for life whatsoever. They had a mission, kill or be killed. That's it. As you know, that's how they sunk a lot of Navy ships. Dive bombing the aircraft into the ship, blowing it up. They had no regard for life whatsoever.
Well, what sort of career did you pursue after you left the war?
I'm just trying to think what I did do after I got out of service. That's a funny thing. I hadn't even thought about that, but I know what I'm doing now. But eventually I've ended up working with a company that sells storage buildings in Powder Springs, Georgia. And that's what I do. I sell storage buildings to people.
Steel buildings?
They're all aluminum.
All aluminum?
Yes, sir. They're all aluminum.
You flew aluminum airplane, now you
That's
sell
right.
aluminum buildings.
That's right.
Are you still involved in selling those?
Yes, sir. I am today, right now. Mm-hmm.
Good for you.
I only work part-time, but it's just something to do, really. And I've been doing this for about the last 3 years, I guess, with that company.
Well, from your military experience, what would you say about what's going on in Iraq today?
Well, I can't understand how we can lose soldiers on a patrol from gunfire or from hand-launched grenades. I just can't visualize that without us taking some kind of action against it. Now, I got a feeling that we in this country are not being told everything. that's going on over there. Because I just can't see how we could suffer a loss of a soldier and do nothing about it. Now, we may be doing something about it, but it's not in our papers here. It's not told to us here in this country. I cannot understand how we've got so many 130,000 GIs over there, and we can't stop this massacre that's going on. 1 and 2 a day, every day. It just don't seem right. I cannot understand with that many people why we haven't been able to restore their water and their power supply. Unless it is so destroyed that you got to build it from ground up all the way. It must be, I don't know. Here again, we aren't being told the situation over there, except things are getting better. They're making improvements. They're progressing. But that's not enough. We're still losing people every day. Makes me mad sometimes. I said we ought to go over there. If these people over there still want to shoot us, we ought to go back and shoot some of them. We don't know if they're civilians or what, but they're killing us.
It's a real problem.
That's right. It's a problem.
Have you joined any veterans organizations, American Legion and VFW?
I was a member of the VFW, yeah.
What do you think of their activities and programs?
Well, I haven't been too much involved with it lately because more than likely the VFW, I don't know, that and the American Legion both, I think, are getting too political. I think. So I haven't been involved with any of their activities to speak of.
Well, let me ask you this. If you had to do over again, would you do the same thing you did?
I sure would. No question. Of course, I'd have to be a lot younger now than I am then to do it.
We can't turn the clock back.
No, sure can't. But if I could turn the clock back, I'd sure go back. I love flying a P-51. It's the best airplane this country's ever made until we got into the jets.
I can't disagree with you. They saved my life. I used to sit in the nose turret of a B-24 and watch P-51s come by. Went all the way to Berlin and Poland and Dresden and places like that.
Yeah. One of the good friends that joined the Air Force with me in Marietta, we both got on the train the same night to go to Nashville, Tennessee for classification. His name was Charles DeFore, D-E-F-O-O-R. And he ended up in a P-47 in France. And he was killed in France in a P-47. He was shot down.
In my small town, there must have been about 8 or 10 guys who wound up in Marine Air Corps, Army Air Corps. I'm the only one left. My best friend was flying out of Gulfport in a B-17 and disappeared, just as your friend did.
Just gone, huh?
They think he was struck by lightning. Another was seen in the Frankfurt, Germany train station, and they hung him. He'd been captured. The price we paid, they paid, it had to be done, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. But I'm telling you,
Well, it's been a long time since World War II.
Yeah, it sure has.
You ever reflect on those days?
So once in a while, when I get to look at stuff like this, it brings back memories of what I went through and what I've seen in this world.
Well, perhaps your grandchildren have an opportunity to take a look at
I gave my son Marshall a 5x7 enlargement of these two, and he's got them hung on his wall at his house. And that's the only pictures that I have ever made, and these were made on Aishima, the island itself.
Turn them around.
as you can see.
Turn that one. We haven't seen this
I
one
want to get them
yet.
in the camera. The name of your airplane's Tin Man.
The Tin Man, that's right.
You didn't choose that name.
No, sir. The flight chiefs, crew chiefs are the ones that named all the aircraft. The pilots didn't have a thing to do with that. The crew chiefs, because that was his airplane. He maintained it. He fixed anything that was wrong with it and kept it in flying condition. It was his responsibility, not the pilot. The only thing the pilot had to do was tell him what he had to fix. He even put the ammo in the wings for the machine guns and all that. He did the works. He fueled them, everything. He did everything that's done to that airplane. And therefore he could name the airplane what he wanted.
Pilots came and pilots went.
That's right.
Got 5 minutes.
Okay.
Well, we're almost at the end.
I want to tell you one other thing that happened to me while I was in advanced flying school in Selma, Alabama. One afternoon, 48 of us, there's 2 people to the airplane. We got into the AT-6s, 24 of them, and flew them to Montgomery, Alabama, and landed at the air base and parked them. Got on trucks and went back to Selma, Alabama for the night. But on the way back, we noticed a bunch of guards on the highway bridges, on the railroad tracks, and all of that. And I said, what in the world's going on? So when we went back to Selma that night, spent the night, got in the trucks the next morning at daylight, rode back to Montgomery, got in our aircraft and sat there with the radios on. And we were sitting and parked in formation, you know. And I looked out after a while, and here comes this big black limousine with no top on it. And guess who was in the car? President Franklin D. Roosevelt. And we flew a demonstration for the President of the United States that day. And we flew back to Selma, Alabama. That's what we were doing that day in Selma. We flew an exhibition for the President.
When was that?
I don't remember. I just know one thing. I wrote my mother a letter, who still lived in Canton at that time, and told her what had happened. She took my letter and carried it to the North Georgia Tribune, which was the local newspaper, and they published it word for word. And I had a copy of that, and I cannot find it now to save my life. But that's one other experience I had, was flying a review for the President of the United States in an AT-6.
He was the only president we knew.
That's right.
He's a remarkable leader.
I know what, after I got out of the service, I remember I went to work at Lockheed after getting out of the VA. When the VA left Lockheed now, I went into, I hired in Lockheed in June of 1951. And I worked there for 35 years and retired from Lockheed.
What'd you do at Lockheed?
Well, at one time I started out working in payroll accounting. And then from there I went over to cost accounting. And I had the responsibility of dealing with vendors from all over the country and materials that we bought from them, and I paid their invoices. I had to keep and write letters about making payments. I have paid $1 million for a machine in that plant. Of course, when we got a machine like that cost that much money, they said, well, we'll give you a discount if you will pay us without waiting 30 days. Pay when you get the invoice. I'd sit down and write up a check request and carry it up to the financial officer's office, and he approved it. I'd send him a check with the discount, up to $1 million. Of course, he had to get the money from California into the Georgia bank before we could release the check.
It was a very responsible job.
Oh yeah, so that's what I did. I worked for Lockheed.
35 years.
35 years. I quit.
Good career.
went to work in 51 and I retired when I was 65.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. That's very interesting. You had a unique career,
I've had a ride.
and here we are today. And